The Douglas Coleman Show is made possible with support from Seth David Radwell, a recent guest on the program and author of American Schism, How the Two Enlightenments Hold the Secret to Healing Our Nation, released this past July. As Publishers Weekly writes in its recent glowing book life review of American Schism, business executive Radwell's epic debut examines the historical influences that have led to what he sees as the collapse of politics in the United States. Seth Radwell makes the case that the current chasm between the American right and left can be traced back to the 18th century's Age of Enlightenment and the basic tenets of liberty, equality, and reason. American Schism provides a historical perspective that can help us fight today's unreason with reason and bridge current-day divides. American Schism by Seth David Radwell is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and wherever books are sold. For more information, go to AmericanSchismBook.com.
It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Tammy Dahlstrom. Hey, Tammy, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it. As we were just talking about before we got on, we were talking about COVID and about Las Vegas and the grim the grim times that we've had for the past year or so. It really did hit the performing artists very hard, though, yeah?
Oh, it definitely did. I mean, our industry completely shut down for a very long time, as did many industries, and have been slow to get back going again because everybody's, the nature of our business, we all work so closely together for prolonged periods of time. We have to be in each other's faces, as actors. So luckily there were some protocols and things that were put into place to try to keep us all as safe as possible. The Miracle Workers, the show that I did, we actually shot, during COVID. So that was interesting, having to get tested often and wearing the masks a lot. And except when we were ready to roll, we were all kept distanced and masked. And it was a different working experience. But I must say, most of the people on the show it was their first opportunity to work again. And we were thrilled. Despite all of the protocols, we were thrilled and happy, and it was a joyous moment to just be there with other people, which had been so long for so many of us.
Now, were you guys shooting in a studio, or were you outside, or what?
Thankfully, we shot at a beautiful ranch up in Santa Clarita area, outdoors. 90% of the show was shot outdoors because we're literally on the Oregon Trail, or, supposed to be on the Oregon Trail. So we were in covered wagons and walking in dirt, trails, and with giant, animals, oxen and such, by my side. And so because of that, it never felt as dangerous, perhaps, as if we were, on a set. Because being outdoors, it just didn't feel as cumbersome that way.
Yeah, and I think even some of the laws regarding social distancing and how many people can group together and things were more relaxed outside than they were inside.
Yes,
yeah.
But what it was for us was really dictated also by our unions. All of the industry has a variety of unions, including the actors. We have ours, SAG-AFTRA, and they all sort of got together and created what they felt like were safe, a safe environment, which is exactly what a union is supposed to be doing, is creating, safe working conditions. So they all of the unions in the entertainment industry got together and created sort of a blueprint for what the expectations were in order for us all to go back to work. And they were strict, for sure. But because of that, we stayed very safe.
So is there anything going on now with this Delta variant coming back? I mean, we're not going to have to go back to all of that kind of distancing and restrictions and stuff? Are you seeing any of that?
I wish I knew the answer. I wish I knew the answer to that. I know that, I'm in Los Angeles based, and we've, things have gotten scaled back. People are, the atmosphere is back to people really paying attention and doing their best to try to social distance. It's not as rigorous, or the protocols are not quite as restrictive as I think they were the first time around, because a lot of people here anyway have gotten the vaccine, but now we're finding, every day it feels like we're finding out a new bit of information about all that, which then informs us. But production is alive and well and going. Shows and films and things are in production. That doesn't seem to be coming to a halt the way it did the first time around, but we know so much more now, right? So about just how to keep ourselves safe. So hopefully that all continues to work. I know that it's, rising cases in most everywhere in the country, and I think around the world too with Delta. But I think it's this time around, it does feel different. Maybe it's a false sense of security. I don't know. But I wish I had the answers, and I wish, we could figure out a way to keep it gone for good. I know the world is working on that, but it's just not that simple.
Well, I agree. I don't want to go back to a year ago, that's for sure. And I think you're right. I think we have learned, because before that, who had heard of social distancing? Who had heard of really any of it?
Right.
So at least now we kind of know, okay, we got to go back to that again if it gets really bad.
Right.
But yeah, I agree. Let's talk a little bit about Miracle Workers. Now, this is on TBS?
TBS.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're in season 3?
Correct. It's an anthology series. So every season is a different premise, a different setup, a different cast of characters, although the main series regulars are the same people. I am joining them for season 3, which is set on the Oregon Trail back in 1844. So it's the pioneer days. I'm a farmer turned frontierswoman, Martha. I'm looking for a better life out west for my family, because farming has just not been so good right now. And, so I'm willing to risk it all to sort of head west for a better life, and the obstacle really is don't die on the way. That's really the obstacle of the whole group. It's almost, and it is a comedy, so it's almost like, a road trip Western, sort of to play out, just using covered wagons and oxen to pull the way instead of a car. But it is about the craziness, the antics, the dire situations that we find ourselves in, and how, we're looking for a miracle essentially to happen to get us to Oregon.
Well, I was intrigued by the fact that this was a comedy, because when I think of Oregon Trail and 1840s and comedy, it doesn't quite go together in my brain. And
you're so right. It doesn't naturally seem like a fit.
No, and when I originally looked at it, I thought, it's like, what was that show with Jane Seymour? Dr. Quinn?
Oh, Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman.
Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, right? So I thought, okay, maybe it's something like that. But that was certainly not a comedy. So what is this style of the comedy? Again, then now I'm thinking, okay, comedy Western, Blazing Saddles.
Blazing Saddles, exactly. It's a little bit of, the amazing Mel Brooks Blazing Saddles. And I liken it to 13-year-old boy humor. Like if you like, silly giggles, but the beauty of it, and I give such credit to the showrunners, Dan Merck and Robert Padnick, because they've taken something that is, such a dramatic, what we would think of as being, truly a drama, and they've used it and inserted it and dealt with it in such a way that, that we can make light of, we can bring and insert the comedy into it to make us all giggle, and also inserting some sort of themes and things and poking fun at ourselves in modern time. So they really have crossed these boundaries with it, which is why I think it sort of is resonating, and it just allows it to be even more absurd. So they lean into the sort of absurdity of it all. From the very opening shot, where you have Daniel Radcliffe, who is a small town sort of preacher, that he's in our town. He is presiding over a sort of memorial, right? We're burying one of our own, and suddenly another during the service drops dead, and he just goes, well, okay, put her into, she'll fit. So it's that same sort of, right. Just using the dire straits of it all to create the absurdity. And they Dan and Robert did a beautiful job of being able to do that, which is partly why I was so wanting to be part of, for many reasons, I wanted to be part of the show. But that was just one. They made me giggle from the very beginning using a premise that I really shouldn't be giggling about.
Also in the show, you mentioned Daniel Radcliffe, also is Steve Buscemi, right? And
yes,
when brilliant. I like him. And when I saw his name come up, then The Big Lebowski, which was one of my favorite films, he was in that. Is the humor sort of similar to that? Because that was really funny without actually being really funny.
Yes. It's on the absurd side.
On the absurd side, right.
Yes. And I feel like, Miracle Workers is a meeting of both of those things. Okay. I do feel like it's a cross between those two. I think that's a great way to think of it. And great example. Okay.
So if we were going to create our own sort of log line, we'd say Blazing Saddles meets The Big Lebowski.
Sure.
Okay.
I love that.
All right, that works. Also, you were in a movie called A Boy Named Poe, which I saw fairly recently. Good movie, I liked it. But who are you in that movie? Which character did you play?
I am a social worker who is giving some information and sharing information that our main character doesn't want to hear necessarily. It's a beautiful movie about a father and son, father struggling to help his autistic son, and the relationship that happens between the two of them, the growth that they go through. And I am sort of, I want to be helpful, but I'm really not so helpful because our system, and this is sort of what it really, my, role in the movie really is reality, because, our system is not necessarily set up so well to help parents navigate through needing help with their kids, for true, real, valid reasons. He loses his health insurance, because his job he can't do, and without that he can't put his child and keep him where he's at, and it's just through the struggles. So it is a beautiful movie. That was John Asher. That was his. He's the director, and that was his film, and he actually has a son with autism, so he knew firsthand, which is why I think it's done with such care and heart. That film, it was great. It was a really good film to work on, and just a good set, and a great group of people to be around.
Let's
Thanks
talk
for asking about that.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, it was a great film. I think people should see it. It is definitely, and it's one that family can watch. Which these days gets more difficult to find, where you can all sort of sit around and watch it, and your kids don't go, "What's that?" Never mind.
Exactly. For sure.
Yeah. I wanted to ask a little about you. I'm looking at your bio, and you got started as a kid doing commercials, which a lot of actors have done. Your first commercial was Kellogg's Corn Flakes. That's a pretty good one to get as the first, yeah?
I started out with a bang. I mean, that was definitely a fun one. I was very young, and that was back in the days where they would put regular people on the boxes on the box. So
I remember that.
Ended up on the box of it as well, which was fun and funny. And it's a funny story. That was actually not even my audition. It was my sister's audition, and I happened, we were young kids, and I was there, and they said, "Oh, send her in too," and okay. So I went in, and I ended up booking the spot. So sorry to my sister, but she booked others. But it was fun. And it was back in the time where, the reason I enjoyed it so much is that it wasn't a lifestyle back then, in that, people didn't move from all over the country out to LA to sort of, with their kids and put their kids in acting at such a young age and uproot them. I was already here. And we were having our picture taken by a photographer, and the photographer just simply said something to my mother about, "Hey, did you, your girls are photogenic. They seem to enjoy this. Would you be interested in doing it?" And that's where she sort of did her homework, and found a really solid agent, reputable, and we got in it. And then, you'd book a commercial and be out of school for 1 or 2 days, and then you'd go back to, playing on the playground with your friends. So it was not, it didn't feel like I was missing out from a so-called regular, life or regular childhood. I had all of that. So I had my cake and ate it too, which then just fed my desire, I guess, to do it, for a living, to do it professionally and continue doing it professionally. So it was fun. I did a lot of commercials though, growing up, a lot. It was fun.
So when did you make the sort of transition from commercials to, or maybe not the transition, maybe that's the wrong word, but aspirations to wanting to do other things like TV or film?
Yes. It wasn't until I was out of college even that I really pursued it in that way. I stopped doing commercials sometime in high school. I sort of was, I was over it. Right. I was like wanting to do other things, and my parents never pushed. So they were like, well, yeah, whatever you want. So then I sort of got out of that. And after high school, I went to school, to college. I went to USC, and I studied film and communication there. And so it was more behind the scenes and that going that route. But I then started to also study acting, outside of college, just with private coaches in Hollywood, because I was starting to feel that bug of wanting to do it. And it wasn't be several more years before I moved to New York in the interim and worked in production, for a production house in New York, and then came back to Los Angeles once I realized, I really want to be an actor. Like, I just missed it. And I knew more people here, and plus the weather. I'm being from, the LA area. I am not a cold weather gal. So I was like, winters, after a few, winters in New York, I was like, okay, I'm done. So I headed back out here, because I really was more focused too on film and television and less theater. If I really wanted to go the theater route, I definitely would have stayed in New York. But I didn't. I wanted more film and television, which was what I knew already, right, from growing up. And that's where I felt like I just knew more people, had more contacts, and could sort of get my feet, get myself off the ground better here. So I came back. And so I was in, my mid-20s before I really decided, that is, in fact, what I want to do. And then, as you said, made the sort of transition, started back in commercials again, because that's an easier sort of but just got myself, most actors who are working actors, that's what you do commercials and, film and TV or theater. So opened myself up to commercials first, got my feet, and got myself on the ground a little there, and then studied more, kept honing my skills, because I think that's, really where you have to, and then started to book television and film work.
Does having a list of commercials on your resume, does that help?
Help in securing other types of work?
yeah, we're just showing like you're doing something. Yeah, like you've done something.
Right. I think what it did for me is it made me get that comfortability level again, and with I've been on set numerous times, kind of feel. So the first TV show I booked wasn't my first time on set. You know what I mean? So I think with that, it gave me a level of confidence, and probably also, it might have made it a little easier for me at that time too to get an agent to represent me theatrically, because it's not the same department or division typically as the commercials. So they were willing to take a chance as well because I had on-set experience. They could still see what I looked like on camera from the commercials. So I think it did help in that way. And it just gave me the confidence then that I needed to not stress out of, I've never been on set. What do I do? Where do I go? How do I hit my mark? How do I take direction? Any of those kinds of things. Like I knew how to do all of that.
No, I just was wondering because some people have done very little in commercial work. And I always wonder if it's better just to fill up your resume with anything rather than when you go to audition having a blank slate.
Right. I mean, I think it depends on who you ask, right? I mean, I think that for an agent, it can show that you have been hired and that you, there is, because it is a business, so they're looking at it from that perspective. From, a perspective of casting or producer or director, or the people that are on the other end, the decision makers that are hiring people, I don't know. I mean, I think that maybe it gives them a little bit of confidence if you don't have, any film or TV. But what I always tell people is go get some film or TV. It's not hard to do that now because you can create your own stuff. You can create web series, you can create, funny videos to post on. I mean, like you can do so much yourself these days that I always tell other actors who are coming up, create your own work, because that then can showcase and can give you the footage, to have a demo reel if you don't have, other professional, and just show people. They want to see what you look like on screen. They want to see, because ultimately it's the audition, right? So many directors and executive, showrunners and such who are doing the hiring, they say it really is less so much about how many credits you have, but are you the character? Can I believe you as the character? And can I trust that you can do the job? So it's really, I think, more about that than anything. So that's why you'll see some people who have, tons of credits might miss out on an opportunity to somebody who has fewer credits, but maybe they just weren't as believable as that character. There's just something else about that other person who just captured what they were looking for.
Well, that's
there's always a little bit of risk too involved for everybody, and luck. I tell people, you have to be the talent. The talent, yes, you have to be talented. You have to know what you're doing and all of that. There is skill involved. There is honing your craft, but you have to be ready when luck presents itself.
Timing is really it in a lot of areas in this business.
Timing, yes.
Yeah, it certainly
timing is everything.
Timing is everything. Absolutely. Well, Tammy, we do have to wind this down. Do you have a website that you want to give out, one for the show or a personal website?
I actually, Instagram and Twitter are actually how to keep up with me. So it's just my name at Tammy Dahlstrom on Instagram, and Twitter is at Tammy Dahlstrom, only one M with my name. So Tammy Dahlstrom. And it's Dahlstrom. So that's the best way for fans and followers to sort of keep up with what I've got going on. And I've been posting all kinds of behind the scenes pics lately, and stuff from the show. So it's been fun. There's more to come. We have a few more episodes still here to air for this season. So, it should be, it should wind up as a good one.
Okay, great. And it is called Miracle Workers, Oregon Trail, and it's on TBS. Do you have like a specific time slot? Like back in the days when there was television with,
right, absolutely. Yes, there is. It is on Tuesdays at 10:30 p.m. Eastern time, and or Pacific, depending on, some people get early feeds, they get the East Coast feed, but for the most part, it's 10:30 p.m. on Tuesday nights.
Okay, great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show.
And then, of course, streaming.
And then streaming. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
See, it's that's why I was even hesitant to ask that, because it's so kind of irrelevant these days.
Exactly.
Anyways, thanks so
how we watch
much.
These days is so different.
Thanks
Thank
so
you
much.
so much, Douglas. I really appreciate it.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on The Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Douglas Coleman's Don't Do a Podcast is a dryly humorous rant about Douglas's pet peeve, the unrelenting torrent of podcasts hitting the web on a constant basis. As technology has put podcasting within the reach of anyone, many wholly unqualified people have taken the plunge. This witty polemic tries to persuade them from broadcasting their drivel using Douglas's brand of sarcastic humor. Now on Amazon, only 99 cents.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
Hey, this is Ray Powers. Don't touch anything. You've got it right where you need it. Tuned in to The Douglas Coleman Show. You heard me.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Christina Rienzi. Hey, Christina, how are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me, by the way.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You were actually on our video program. We have two different shows. And according to the Skype register, you were on back in December of 2020.
I remember. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, except I have no idea what we talked about.
Right. You know, it was funny because I wrote a blog post about it because it was inspiring, and now I can't remember, but I have to go back to my blog post. It's like things morph so quickly, right, from last year. So much has happened.
Oh, God, yes. And, you know, it just seems to be getting worse every day.
This is true.
So, what did you want to talk about today? Did you have something new, or we just have a conversation? I've got your website up here, Find Your Happy, and so whatever you want to talk about, we each want to have a conversation.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an author. I write thrillers, but I also am working on nonfiction. And I recently have my background is in psychology and also in coaching. I have my certification in coaching. And so I wanted to venture in the nonfiction world. And so I took a certification class in well-being. It's actually through the Happiness Studies Academy run by Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar, who is a Harvard professor in positive psychology. And I've been working on a book on happiness. And that's where you see that Find Your Happy, because I've kind of shifted my focus a little bit to the nonfiction right now, and I'm working on a book about, you know, accessing happiness on demand, so to speak. If, you know, you're kind of like many of us over the last year have been stuck in a rut and just kind of feeling down and not quite sure how to pull ourselves out of that for one reason or another. I wanted to use my education and experience to, you know, put something out that might be helpful.
I think we certainly can use it. I mean, obviously COVID has been a major problem for the entire world for the last 18 months or so now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it's getting a whole lot better. We keep getting the variants, and the numbers just aren't going away fast enough for some people. I know for me, I want it to go away like forever, but I don't know that that's going to happen. I mean, it's a little better. And some things have opened up. But, you know, I mean, what do you do with that? How do you find you're happy when you have to go out and wear masks and not touch people and try, and if somebody sneezes, you have a heart attack? And, I mean, how do you, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question because there's everybody deals with things differently, right? And this has certainly been a collective experience for so many of us, and primarily negative, to be quite honest. And you're right. It's like, you know, being happy or finding you're happy, and I say you're happy because it's really each one of us defines happiness in our own way. But it's really about finding a state of well-being and a sense of joy and peace when times are tough and rough, which is what we're going through right now. And I think, you know, we definitely don't want to dismiss how we're feeling. That's not the route to feeling good. You know, you don't put aside the fact that you may be fearful, you may be frustrated, you may be angry that some of our freedoms have been taken away, right? That's definitely how I was feeling over the past year. And, you know, you have to find a way to do the little things that bring you joy. And, you know, in terms of, you know, my book and what I focus on were just small, simple ways in the moment you can find some sense of joy or peace. And they're scientifically proven, you know, it's data backed. It's not just my opinion of what, you know, makes me happy, because that wouldn't be very helpful. But I feel like, you know, there's a lot of data and information out there in science on how we feel and well-being and how to pull ourselves out of a rut. And I decided, you know what, let me pick the top 5 things that resonated with me. And maybe if they were, you know, something that you might try if you're in, you know, a bad place and, you know, you just can't find yourself, you know, able to pull yourself out. Like, you know, the day you had plans, I mean, we've all been there and we're so excited and we're going to do one thing or another. And all of a sudden the numbers go up, or a restaurant closes, or a family member's sick, and now everything changes. And you just, you know, you have to deal with that on a regular basis. It can be daunting and dark. So, for example, and I'll give one of the secrets away, one of the things that is heavily talked about in any class you take on well-being or happiness, be it through, you know, the class that I took, through, you know, positive psychology classes in any one of the universities, online classes, one of the really quick and easy things you can do to feel good, to feel better, is really not about you at all. It's about other people, and it's being kind. It's kindness. Kindness increases happiness. And you would think, well, I'm in a bad mood. I don't want to, you know, I don't have the wherewithal, the brain power to be kind. Like, what am I going to do? But it could be something simple, like just being there for a friend, shooting someone an email, giving someone a compliment, maybe, you know, making a meal for someone, or just thinking of someone other than yourself in the moment. Because for sure, when feelings are bad, whether it's, you know, you're stuck in a state of anger or sadness, and it's really about you, and you're focusing on you. And I know I do the same exact thing. You know, no amount of knowledge changes how we are, right? So I do the same thing, and I have to stop myself and go, this isn't all about me. And I have to kind of put the pause button on, and I have to get out of my own way. And absolutely, if you give someone else that feeling of kindness and do something for them, it's an act. You know, it could be a random act of kindness. It could be a specific act of kindness. But being kind increases our happiness. It increases our well-being, our sense of joy. It makes us feel better. You know, these are not lasting forever and ever. These are moments. But I think the more we learn how to access that sense of well-being and joy over time, it does help. It definitely becomes something we carry around with us underneath, that when times are particularly difficult, we can very easily access that.
Well, I know that a lot of people go through their life with a lot of baggage, and it can be stuff from childhood. It can be issues that they had with their parents, with siblings, something like that. And people go on for years and years with that stuff, and they never let it go. And I see Let It Go on your website, and it just reminded me of that. And I know that at some point you do just have to let it go. I know personally for me, I had issues like that, and it drove me nuts because it was almost guiding my life. It was almost controlling me, until one day I finally said, you know what? let it go. And once I did that, it went away. And I could get on with my life and not have that. You know, it felt like I was dragging around a 100-pound weight or something.
Yes. And it's so funny. I heard that exactly what you're describing. I have like this funny phrase I heard somewhere where they were talking about drop the carcass. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Drop the carcass. I know it's like a very like morbid picture, but if you think about it, that's what we're carrying around with us. Absolutely. And listen, it isn't easy. No one's saying it's easy, but I do think that at some point you either get to a point where you can't take it anymore and you just say, I'm letting it go, like you did. And you've worked, you don't realize it, but over time you're growing and developing and working on yourself in ways you don't realize. And you're able to get to a point where you're like, you know what? I am not going to allow this thing to define my life from this point forward. It's a choice. It's not easy for everybody to do that. And I think it is a mindset, but I think the best way to approach something like that is when you want to let something go, with the exception of, yes, there's therapy. And absolutely, if you feel like it's a difficult enough situation, there's nothing wrong with going to talk to somebody, because they are skilled in helping you get over that trauma. But if it's something that you feel like you can do on your own, you deal with it. You face it and you deal with what happened. What was going on back then? How did I feel about it back then? How would I address it now? And do I want this to define my life today and going forward? And it is a choice. And sometimes the choice is, you know what, I'm not okay with what happened. I can't, maybe I can't forgive, and forgiveness is a lightness. I think forgiveness is the best way to move forward, be it yourself or someone else. But even if you can't do that yet, to absolutely face it, acknowledge that it's there, acknowledge that it was a painful experience, but also decide, like, I will no longer give this power over my life. And you move forward from it in whatever way you can. Again, it's not simple, but it's necessary, because at the end of the day, the reason I do what I do and the reason that I chose happiness and positive psychology as an area that I wanted to focus on is because I have come from the world of psychology. And when I was dealing with serious mental illnesses with people and abnormal psychology and all of the things that are so difficult and sometimes don't have resolutions, that I really thought, I want to try to focus on something that we can control and we can move forward from. And that's what this is all about. And the bottom line is, life is short. And we learn that lesson one way or another, right? We either lose somebody that we love, or maybe even a pet we love, or we are, losing a part of our life that's no longer there. There's grief in everything. And I think you just have to say, I'm going to live the best I can. I'm not going to always be happy. I'm not going to be happy every second of the day. That's not realistic. That's not normal. But I am going to make choices. And the choices are going to be to do what brings me joy, well-being, and happiness, and helps me live the life that I'm going to live.
It's funny you mentioned pets. And I was thinking about something earlier when you were talking about change the focus from yourself to somebody else. And you said, just try to be nice. I've got 2 dogs, and they're about as different as they can be while still being dogs. The one dog, it's all about me. He watches me everything I do, everywhere I go. All he wants to do is to please me, be happy. He constantly wants me to pay attention and pet him, and he'll try to do everything right that I want him to do. If I say no, he quickly jumps away. He knows. The other dog that I've got could care less. And all he wants is his Chewy, and he goes and hides in a corner and chews on the thing. And he won't come out for hours, and occasionally he'll come up and let you pet him. And it's like you're doing him a favor, or he's doing you a favor, rather, by letting you pet him. And it's just so funny because they're so opposite. But the personalities, the one that watches me everywhere, he's as friendly as can be. And the other one is a complete bitch, because he will bark at anybody and everything that comes by on the yard.
He's got unresolved issues.
The guy's got unresolved issues. And it's just so funny to watch the 2 of them, because the other one will just sit there at the window while the other one is barking his head off. And it's amazing.
It is. And you know what? I've had dogs all my life. In fact, the last couple of weeks I've lost two of our dogs, family dogs. And it was hard, but I appreciate all my time with them. They're like little people, and they're all so different. You're absolutely right. I had one like you're describing. I had two like you're describing, the different personalities. One that couldn't care less and I'm doing a favor by petting him, and the other one who was all over me. I think the really great thing about dogs that we can learn is that they are who they are. And they don't apologize, you know, and if they're like needy and they want love, they tell you that. If they don't want to be bothered with you, they tell you that too. And they're so authentic to who they are. And I think part of the issue with happiness in humans is that a lot of times we aren't, and we don't even realize it. We don't even realize that we're walking around being versions of ourselves that aren't really truly who we are. Some of us look happy on the outside, we're miserable on the inside. I mean, I did that for years. Some of us look miserable on the outside and we're really good inside. So you can't judge just by what you're seeing, but I think it's each of our responsibilities to ourselves to I'm not even saying like make the inside match the outside, because that's really hard to do. But I think it's like to really accept who we are and to accept everything about us, including the things that aren't perfect, because who is, right? And to be able to accept, like, I am the kind of person, for example, me, I am happy a lot of the time. But if you ever saw me in person, unless we were having a conversation, I look like I'm not happy. I have a face when I walk around like I'm angry at somebody. That has a name. I don't know if I can use profanity, so I'm not, but it's RBF. Look it up. I have that. All my life, people thought I didn't like them and I was angry with them. And really, I was just my face. It's like walking around, I'm in my own head. I'm very introverted. I'm very analytical. So when I walk around, I'm just in there. Also, when I'm happy, I don't jump up and down, scream and yell. That is not me. I'm a calm, kind of like joyful, that kind of peace feeling happy. So my happy doesn't look like the happy next to me who's like bouncing off the walls. So I think that's why, because we can't always see it, and it's not always like visually, we're not always visually aware of like that happiness in someone else, you don't really know how someone's doing. So yes, if you have a friend, how are you feeling? What's going on? Like asking questions, being there for them. That's the kindness part too. You can be kind and feel good about, increase your happiness while helping somebody else out. But it's also really, I think, we have this one life to live. And for me, I think it's important that we try to get to that feeling of well-being and joy, whatever it looks like for you. And it will look different for you than the person next to you, because we are as unique as those dogs. We are all so unique. We're all diverse and unique. It makes us amazing, but we have to spend a little time to understand each other.
Well, that's very true. And also, some people, it takes them their whole life to figure this out.
It is.
And some
a
people,
lifelong journey.
Yeah, and some people get it when they're in their teens or their 20s. They're focused. True. They know exactly where they're going, what they want to do, what makes them happy, what makes them tick. For me, I figured it out at 42. It took me a while, but at least I got there. Better late than never. But some people I know that are in their 80s that have not figured it out yet.
I do know that. I know that very well. Yeah, definitely. There's all different levels. And I think it isn't easy. Like I was talking with someone today who was saying, like, I don't know what I want. I don't know what is going to make me feel good. Like they don't know. And it is a process of exploration. And so is life, right? Life is a journey. I know that sounds cliche, but it is a journey. And that's why they call it the pursuit of happiness, not like the end game of happiness. Like there is no, hey, I'm happy, we're good. It's all life long. You're going to go through things and you're going to just make it a priority to feel good and live your best life in whatever that looks like for you. You're making it a priority. So for example, if something doesn't suit you, doesn't serve you, say no. Saying no and having boundaries are a huge part of feeling good and having a sense of well-being, because you're not, trapped in any situation to do for someone else. It's about what is going to serve you and who you're going to be going forward, or your family, or maybe a cause, and I think the best thing, the one thing that's so hard for us to do, but the thing that I so respect in others is, like, I've heard compliments of people who say, like, she knows who she is or he knows who he is. Just even knowing who you are, like you said, it's a lifelong, exploration. Who am I? What do I want? I don't want the same things I did 20 years ago. I probably am not going to want the same things in 20 years. But like my deep sense of of purpose and meaning and what brings me joy, I think will never change, because those are kind of intrinsic things that make me who I am. And I have to keep going back to that. And I think all of us have that sort of responsibilities to ourselves. We owe it to ourselves to take a minute to figure that out, because you can have a life that feels good, that feels happy, despite the things that are happening to you that aren't, because they're going to happen. That's life. These things are going to happen. You cannot prevent things from happening that are going to hurt. You know, it's normal to be angry, be sad, be mad, you know, be frustrated, be, you know, relationships to end, like people to pass away. Like, this is like our life, but how you approach it and who you show up as, it makes all the difference in your experience.
Well, that's very true. And yeah, you're right. You don't know what's going to happen. And it's usually other people bring things to your life that can make you crazy. It's typically not the dogs, because they don't have that ability. See, one thing about human beings is that language gives us the ability to deceive and to deflect. Yeah. And unfortunately, people use that as a mask. Like you said, you see somebody and you don't really know what they're about. They can say something, but, you know, and maybe you believe their words, but then it turns out that that's not really who they are.
Very true.
So all of this deception takes so long for a lot of us to sort of work through, because we thought, well, you said you were blah, 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 and in fact they weren't. So, and it hurts, especially if it's your significant other or your parent or one of your brothers or sisters, and, you know, it hurts. It does hurt. It takes a long time to get through that.
And sometimes never. Sometimes, like you said, you carry it, but sometimes you carry it because it isn't that you're going to let it go and move on, and, you know, it's there if you don't deal with it, but it's also it makes you who you are, and it changes you. And so you become somebody else, and you have to decide, is this who I want to be as a result of this experience? And I do believe that those experiences, all of them are, I look at them now a little differently, but it's not that they're okay by any means, but I look at them as kind of trainers. Like when I have a difficult person in my life, I look at them as like, okay, they're my trainer. Like, how am I going to react? What am I going to do? Who am I? It's almost like a forcing of me to choose who I want to be and make decisions about, like, do I keep this person in my life? Do I not? How do I move forward from this? Because if I don't actively think about that, I am succumbing to whatever they said or did that was completely out of alignment with who I am. And I have to choose that. It isn't easy. And sometimes it takes a lot of hurt, sadness and time to go, like you said, not just am I going to let it go, but who am I going to be because of this? Is this going to help me grow? Am I going to learn? Or am I going to just like let myself die inside a little bit because of it? Because absolutely. And this is where, when I talk about being an author of thrillers, this is where my fascination comes in on that end, because I always was fascinated in human behavior and the mind and people who do, like, quote unquote bad things, whatever bad things means to you. Why? Where does that come from? And, how does your psychological makeup, how does that contribute? And so that's where I absolutely got interested in thriller writing. And as you can see, which is hard to make the connection, thriller writing and nonfiction very much overlap, because you're dealing with humans, or you're dealing with the idea of human behavior, experiences, trauma, overcoming, growing, changing, whatever. So yeah, it is all connected, but there is no quick fix to a bad experience. I think that my focus is really not about like, hey, you've got to be happy all the time and let's just be happy. It's like, you deserve, right? No, because that's not real. I'm the last person, and my husband will tell you, I always say, but I feel happy inside. He's like, I don't see that from you because you're running around, like I'm like 100 miles an hour, and I don't always stop and just think about things, like when it's being a normal human and how you're reacting in the world, right? And who you're comfortable with. But we are not happy all the time. It's about knowing how to access happiness when you need it the most, and also knowing you deserve to feel good. You deserve a sense of well-being and joy. And it's not overnight. It's not instantaneous, but there are things you can teach yourself to do on a regular basis that you have a coping mechanism, you have a tool in your back pocket so that you know when you're going down that road and you can pull yourself out of it.
Well, in the old days, if you laughed like that too much, they would lock you up into one of those rubber rooms.
Right.
Because, what do they call the laughing idiot? And, there is a balance. I mean, I've seen people who have that true kind of inner peace, but they don't have to laugh all the time. They do laugh a lot, though. I will say that. If you've ever watched any video of the Dalai Lama, I mean, that guy is always laughing.
He's happy.
And he's happy.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure he feels sad too, but
I'm sure
he's a happy,
But his sadness is quick. His happiness is long. Yeah, and that's the difference. But you don't get the impression that he's a laughing idiot. He's happy and laughing because he's figured it out. That's what
this is true. So true. And I'm so glad you said that, because I think that there's a place inside of you. I think of it as like this place inside of you that's just sitting there, and you're going through life and you have like a moment of anger and you get frustrated, or, a moment of sadness, or moments or hours, whatever that is for you. But it's there. And if you give yourself a chance, you can get to it, and that part of you can come out. You'll deal with your sadness, you'll cry, you'll do whatever you need to do. You'll deal with your anger, and then you'll be able to go there. And I always say, like, feel all the emotions. Like you deserve to acknowledge and honor your emotions. They're there for a reason. They're telling you something. They're always going to tell you something. What they're telling you, you might not think on the surface, but every emotion's telling you something. Usually it's that you're in or out of alignment with who you are, and it's telling you something. So pay attention. But I think when you're in that place of you've learned to develop access to that sense of joy and well-being, like the Dalai Lama. You don't live there. You don't stick your feet in the ground and root yourself there. You go there, you do what you need to do there, you feel how you're going to feel, and then you step out of the dirt and you walk away. Like that's the piece the tool we need. It's like, do what you have to do while you're there, but don't live there. Don't bury yourself there, because that's how we get into that unhealthy kind of spiral where we can't get out of it. And that's what absolutely causes the long-term negative effects of negative emotions, because negative emotions are not bad in and of themselves, but when you live in them for too long, they do cause health problems. Yeah,
that's very true. We do have to kind of wind this down, but just on a final note, do you remember the movie Arthur?
I do.
And at the very beginning,
that was a great movie.
At the very beginning, he just laughed for like 10 minutes straight. Except he was drunk. That was the only thing, right?
So that's it. He played the good part. I mean, Dudley Moore was amazing in that. Absolutely.
But it took him all the alcohol to get to that point.
Right.
Unfortunately, but it just was funny. He had the best laugh in the world. I mean, he could laugh and make you laugh. And
for sure. Yeah. For sure. That was great. But that's a great point. It's you don't always know what you're seeing, but you take from it what's gonna, listen, he was laughing, he was drunk, but made us laugh. So we took something from that. It was positive.
Well, we do have to wind this down. Thanks so much for coming back. This was a nice conversation. You want to give out your website?
Sure. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. It's ChristinaRienzi.com, and all of my information is there on everything I do, writing, all my books, and connecting with me.
Okay. There are links to your social media and stuff on there too.
Yes, all of that lives there. I have a Facebook page. I primarily hang out on Instagram, and I do have a biweekly newsletter where I'll, send you a little bit of inspiration every other week just to keep you going through this crazy life we have. And hopefully, you can walk away with something positive from it. Oh, great. Well, thanks again for coming on. It was nice talking to you again. And best of luck with it.